Welcome back to Inclusive Design 2024, brought to you in partnership with our platinum sponsors, Barrier Break and Intopia, and our gold supporters, Barrier Break, InfoAxia, and Technological. You can follow us on Mastodon, Blue Sky, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And if you have questions for the presenter, post them using the IT24 hashtag. You can also post questions on our YouTube chat. We'll gather your questions at the end for our Q&A. A reminder that ID24 is a respectful community, and you can find our code of conduct on the Inclusive Design 24 website. Now, I am thrilled to be joined by my guest host, Wendy Reed. Wendy, over to you.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. Up next, we have Owen Niblock, who is presenting Understanding the Why Around Neurodivergent Inclusive Web Design. Over to you, Owen.
Hey, thank you, Kathleen and Wendy. Hi, everyone. So this is a talk. It's quite a personal talk about kind of why it's good to consider neurodivergent people when you're designing websites. A lot of the aspects I put in this talk are to do with my life. Some of them less so. Some of them are from the communities that I'm involved with. But before we kick in, I want to say thank you to ID24 for having me. This is such a beautiful thing. I've been watching some of the talks today. Particular highlight for me this morning was the one about kind of stress-free web design stuff, which was just really awesome. And this is kind of stuff that you can do for me. So that's my name and my email address. I'm ridiculously easy to find online. And then if you want these slides, I believe they're being shared in like the socials and things as well, a link to those so you can follow along at home if you would like to. So what are we going to talk about? I like banging on about myself a little bit, so we'll do that. Talk about me and what I'm doing at GitHub and my life in general and some stuff like that. And then we're going to dig into neurodiversity in general, just for anyone who isn't kind of au fait with the terms, wants a bit of a refresher. Then we're going to talk about kind of three aspects of web design and how that affects neurodivergent folks such as myself. We're going to talk about content, we're going to talk about the style of the website itself, and then we're going to talk about some of the functional aspects of the website. Then we're going to look at some kind of general accessibility guidelines, which have been mentioned on and off all morning, I'm sure. And we're going to have some conclusions, and then there'll be a little bit of time for Q&A, hopefully, at the end of all that. So let's get going. So this is me. My name's Owen Niblock. If you want to find me on Twitter or Mastodon or any of those places, type my name in, and there I am. It's hard to escape my online life. So I am undiagnosed autistic. I think it's very important to broach this subject of diagnosis versus undiagnosis because I live in the UK. And in the UK, as an adult who was not diagnosed as a child, it is actually quite difficult to even get to the point where you're talking about a diagnosis in this country. And then the diagnosis itself can take a long time, like 18 months plus at the moment, I think was the last estimate that I saw. And so, and how do I know I'm autistic? I'm a big fan of self-advocacy, and I think self-diagnostics should be a thing in this country. If you learn enough about yourself, you should be able to say. So I went in a process of, maybe I'm autistic too. I think I'm autistic too. Now I actually feel comfortable saying I am autistic, which has been really eye-opening and beautiful for me at this time in my life. And my realization came when my eldest daughter went through the diagnosis process, and she is like a little mini me. It was an interesting journey through both of our childhoods as we were going through the diagnosis process, and it just made me realize that like it explains a lot of things about my childhood and my upbringing that has really helped me in the last, so it was about, I think it was 8 years, 6 years ago, no, 6 years ago when she was 8, that we got the diagnosis through. And since then, I've done a lot of learning, and I feel like I'm in a much better place. I'm an accessibility engineer at GitHub. I'm a Microsoft/GitHub employee. It's complicated, as the relationship status would say. And I'm an owner of cats. These are my two cats you can see on the slide here. So the one on the left, that's Bayon, and the one on the right is Frodo. Bayon named because when we got him, he was massive, and we thought that he was the size of a bear. And Frodo because he was a cheeky little scamp because he was a kitten when a neighbor of ours found him in their shed. However, Frodo has since grown to be much bigger than Bayon, so now their names make absolutely no sense. I also love Star Trek and obviously Lord of the Rings and things. I'm a part-time comedian, so if you do search for my name and watch some videos, they won't all be about neurodivergence, and some of them you might not want to watch at work. And I'm also a full-time weirdo, very much happy with the fact that I'm a strange person. So let's talk about neurodivergence at GitHub. When I started at Microsoft, so I was at App Center Test Cloud before GitHub, and when I realized I was autistic, I got involved in the community there at Microsoft. Then I was moved to GitHub about 6 years ago now, I think. And there's this place in the Slack channel at GitHub called Neurocats. At the time, it was called Neuroconverse, and I have happily seen that beautiful community grow and thrive. Now we have 250 members or thereabouts. Just lovely neurodivergent folk who help each other out, who talk about their problems, who just discuss day-to-day aspects of being neurodivergent. It is one of my favorite places to hang out at GitHub, and I'm actually a member of the Neurocats LT at the moment, trying to give back to the community a little bit. It's a wonderful thing. We wrote a blog post recently about how to create a supportive kind of community like that, and I'd thoroughly recommend you check it out. There's a link later on in the other slides. So I talk about neurodivergence a lot. I've used that term quite a few times already. And what do we mean? So a lot of people use the term neurodiversity when they're referring to things like this, and that is totally fine. I feel like there's a distinction that should be made between those two terms that I find very important. So neurodiversity encompasses all people that have different ways of their brain working, including neurotypical people and neurodivergent people. I mean, I think that distinction is important because when we talk about people who are neurodivergent, we're talking about people who have brains that work in an atypical way. And I think the distinction is important enough that we should try and use the right terms when we're talking about these things. So I wanted to mention that. And then I wanted to talk about neurodivergence itself. So it's a huge topic, and it includes a lot of different kind of conditions and facets of the human brain. I've listed a few: autism, ADHD, dyslexia, aphantasia. I put on that list even though it's not talked about much because I have aphantasia. So I would like to tell you about it sometimes. That is the inability to picture things in your mind. So my brain is just my voice talking, like narrating my life. It's very strange. So mental health conditions count as a neurodivergence, and there's many, many more. Go out there, read about them, find out. It's a fascinating topic and a really interesting thing to learn about. And I also wanted to sort of say, before really getting into the meat of this talk, that this is not an exhaustive list. This should not be considered, this is how you make your website neurodivergent friendly. Not at all. This is some of the facets that you will need to think about to be doing neurodivergent friendly web design, and like why you should be considering those people and that way of thinking. But it's a way of getting started. It is a signpost to other things that you should be doing and learning about. And if you take one thing and one thing only from this talk, let it be this: that the most important thing to do when you're designing a website is involve a huge diverse range of people to test that website, and not just the users you already have of the website. Because if you're excluding people, then they won't be using your systems and your software and your websites yet. So try and spread the net as far and wide as you can, not just neurodivergent people, other disabilities, other backgrounds, other types of people. Just the wider the group of people you can get to try out your thing, the more inclusive it's going to be. Okay. So we're going to start with some guidance around content on the website. So the text and the things that make up your website, and ways that causes me harm or causes me a problem, the different facets of that, and why it does it, perhaps if I can think of them, and why you should consider not doing some of the things that I don't want you to do. The first one's one of the really big ones for me. Animations and things that move. You see I'm scratching my arm because even talking about it makes me slightly uncomfortable. When I started at GitHub, obviously we build GitHub on GitHub. That's the phrase that's used, which is a wonderful thing. Most of my day-to-day work and like stuff that happens is actually in the GitHub system. So writing codes, it gets pushed up to PRs, and there's issues and there's discussions. And because it's like a vibrant community and a happy kind of excited place to be doing stuff, there's a lot of animated GIFs. And when I first started, I found that really hard to deal with because there was no way for me to stop the animated GIFs. The only way I found to do it was to use Safari and add a CSS template to all websites so that if it was a GIF, it just didn't display it, which was fine. It stopped me having a problem with like reading issues that had lots of animated GIFs celebrating something, whatever. But the problem then was I was missing the kind of social context of those GIFs. So I kind of felt like I was missing out on something. And a little while ago, the some fine folks in the accessibility team where I'm sat, I wasn't involved in the work itself, but I'm immeasurably grateful for this work. They added the ability to pause GIFs and to set a setting so they don't automatically play. Now, that has changed my life at GitHub because now I've removed that CSS from Safari. I don't even actually use Safari anymore. I actually use Edge as a good Microsoft employee, and I can still participate in those conversations. So I can see the GIF, I can press play, I can enjoy it and chuckle along because it was quite funny. Then I can pause it and continue on reading the thing. So I guess basically what I'm saying is be cognizant that animation can make things hard to pass. And having the ability to turn them off by default and pause using the operating system's settings, prefers reduced motion, is the best way of doing this. And it's just helpful for me if anywhere on your website where you have animations that you kind of invest the time to do that. And that is not the only way that animations can cause me problems. So, for example, I was kind of live auditing a website a little while ago, which had a carousel, and there was no way to pause the carousel. But not only that, the bounds of the carousel changed as it went around. So someone had uploaded a picture into the carousel that was bigger than the standard size. So every now and then the carousel would jump up and move down. It was an interesting kind of mix of movements and things. And I actually couldn't audit the website because I don't know, my brain melted. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't do anything else apart from just point out that I couldn't cope with the carousel. And in the end, one of my colleagues stepped in and continued the audit. And after the call, I went down, sat in a dark room for a little while and calmed down. So that is the effect that animations can have on someone like me. Noise, no thank you. No thank you, noise. I like any noise on a website, I kind of struggle with, but noise that happens when the website loads is a big no for me. If you design a website and when I load it, there's immediately some noise, I will close that website and may never return. So, just to warn you, that'll happen. Video tutorials are an interesting thing for me. I think this might be related to my aphantasia. So I have kind of inconsistent processing speeds. I can process some things incredibly fast. And if I'm in like the flow and I'm hyper focused on something, I can work really, really quick. When it's something that's not kind of in the realms of my natural processing skills, sometimes it might take me longer than normal. So one of those things is if there's a video teaching me how to do something and I have to kind of watch the video and then pause it and then go and do the thing, then between watching it and pausing it and then trying to do it, I can't picture the thing that I was just watching. So I find it hard to kind of go from the learning about it to the doing it. And then I'll have to rewind a bit and check that I've done it right. So what I'm saying basically is provide alternative methods, because some people find video tutorials incredibly helpful. And like that's the only way they want to learn something. They want to watch the video and they can actually do it in tandem. They can watch the video while they do it. And that's perfect. I cannot do that. So if you provide the video, but you also provide written instructions with maybe some screenshots, I will 100% of the time use the written instructions and the screenshots, and it will make me very happy. This is a difficult one. Make it as clear and simple as possible. Use plain language, simple sentences, active voice. So say Owen gave a talk instead of a talk was given by Owen, for example. It's been shown that active voice can be easier to understand. And this is it's funny, we're talking about making websites easier for neurodivergent people, but really this is something that makes things better for all users. All users want the website to be clear and simple to use, to be able to understand it and to like have no ambiguity around it. And I think this is one of the ways in which planning for neurodivergent inclusivity really benefits just general design is that you're making things you're making conscious decisions about how easy to use your website is by considering people that might struggle with certain aspects of it, and that's got to be a good thing. It's going to make your website better. Yeah. So I've mentioned implied and ambiguous content. This is like a wider topic in itself. So, and it doesn't just come to web design. I have an ability to interpret things in ways that you might not expect. So if there is, like, say there's 3 different ways that I could read something, that means that maybe 1 in 3 times that I read it, I'll be correct. So you have to try and make sure that you describe things in a way that is not ambiguous. Um, It's a difficult one, this, because it's very hard. And I know that I also do this when I'm describing things or saying things. Sometimes I can be ambiguous. I can use metaphors or kind of quirks of speech that I think are fun and ridiculous. And sometimes that makes it hard to understand what I'm saying. And yet here I am telling you not to do that. So, don't do that. Captions. We talk about captions a lot. We don't always talk about captions in the frame of people who have kind of processing differences, but it's very important. So I need captions on videos. I need captions on videos because I find it difficult to concentrate on the words that are being said and the visual aspect, I think, at the same time. But I only ever use captions when I'm watching non-live video. I find captions on live video, because it comes out as the speech is happening, it kind of puts word by word. Then the movement of the subtitles system is more problematic to me than the captions not being there, which is really interesting for me. I find that kind of fascinating. So that's a trade-up for me that I personally make. But really what we want to say is always have captions available. Transcripts are also good. So when I'm watching rewatch videos at work, for example, I will often watch the video with the transcript kind of scrolling along, and it has like an underline of where you are, which I find really helpful because I can skip back and see what they've just said and then go back and have another look at what's being said right now. This is a very personal one to me. I'm just going to take a little sip of my water because it makes me so angry that I might, yeah, hang on. So this is a personal bugbear that is specific to websites that sell things, anything. It could be a service or an item. Show me the price, like as soon as you can. Show me how much it's going to cost me. If I have to give you details to find out how much it's going to cost, I'm not going to give you details. Even if I really, really want it, I'm going to go away. Um, it's it's even better if the price is really upfront and right there. I'm more likely to buy something more expensive because you've told me how much it is right at the start than I am to buy something kind of less expensive that I have to dig down to try and find out how much it is. And services websites are really bad at this because they'll often have like feature comparisons and things like that, and then blah, 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 blah. And then you have to click through to a thing, and then you have to open it out, and then eventually it tells you how much the price is. Please don't do that. I won't buy your thing. That is all. All right, next section, style guidance. So this is going to be like the style of your website. What else can I say? Let's just get on. So font choice matters. This is very important. So there is a link here that if you Google it or download the slides from the link, you can find this British Dyslexia Style Guide. It is quite short and informative. It's very good, and it includes things like using sans serif because it's easier to read, some spacing things, just yeah, follow the guidelines. It's written by people who know what they're talking about. I'm very lucky. I do not have dyslexia. I know people who do. It's a fascinating, fascinating subject and topic, and I suggest you read a lot about it. Do not reinvent the web. I think someone else has talked about this already today. It's like the internet has been around for a long time, and design has kind of matured and progressed, but they're still websites at the end of the day. And if you're making a website that does a particular thing and you don't have a really, really good reason to make it not like a website, then don't do that. It's really helpful for me to help me navigate something if it is what I expect. Which brings me to my next slide. I do not expect the unexpected. So if your website does do surprising things, maybe they are surprising and delightful things, and I will quite enjoy them, but it's more likely that I will get confused. And so you have to be very careful if you're doing anything out of the ordinary, putting navigation in a strange place or displaying it in an interesting and kind of odd way, using fonts in a strange way, or not having any kind of text visible on the on the screen. Anything like that is going to be a problem. And then these three are kind of related, and then consistency. So not just consistency with other websites on the internet, but consistency within your own website or product. Like don't move the navigation elements around. Don't like if it's a similar type of page, display it in a similar way, then I can find the aspects of it much more easily. Just any way you can keep things consistent is going to help me process because I have to do less kind of brain work to know what I'm doing. Hey, colors and contrast. I find this one really interesting because obviously some people need high contrast. It's very important, and there are web guidelines specifically around that. And there are also there's guidance that I don't think is captured in web accessibility guidelines for people with autism because they might prefer not to have bright colors on something. They might prefer muted colors, pastel colors, things like that. Um, it's a tricky one with colors, I feel, because it's very personal, and what might help you will be a hindrance to someone else. So one of the things that I really like about a feature flag thing that's in GitHub at the moment is like this choice. So not just light and dark mode, but being able to choose various different um, options. And I would love it if more websites had like a muted mode or I've just woken up and I'm not feeling great and I don't want all those bright colors mode would be really nice. So if you're taking these people into account and you have already created a light and dark mode, hopefully it won't be too difficult for you to either make it customizable or make it so that your users have a larger range of options. But I do also appreciate this can get expensive pretty quick because you have to design those kind of color choices, and we can't all do that. But it is nice when people think of those sorts of things. So on to the the final section of things, and this is functional guidance for your website, so how it works. Give me time. This has definitely been mentioned previously in the last talk, I believe, as well as maybe some of the others. So I get stressed with time-based tasks, booking tickets, for example, when they've got a little countdown timer. And or even if it's not got a timer on it, that can also be a problem. So if I know that at some point my login is going to time out, and so maybe I'll lose the thing that I'm working on, that will be difficult for me. And I'll fail the task, and then I'll go back and I'll have to do it again, and I'll be angry, and maybe I won't do it again because I'm not doing this now, and I will stomp away from my desk and go make a cup of tea, try and calm myself down a little. Now, I have to say, GitHub's pretty good at this in my experience, where things get saved in local storage, something goes wrong, and then I go back to a PR description that I'm writing and it's magically there and things like that. I find very pleasing. So please do that. Make things, extendable, I guess. Make the time extendable. Let me know that it's going to be okay as well. So it's like, oh, if this times out, it would be really nice if I was buying tickets for something and it said this is going to time out in 15 minutes, 15, whatever. But if it times out, click here to rebook the seats, and then it just tried to get those exact same seats again without me having to go through the whole process from the beginning. That would be great. And at this point, I wanted to kind of talk about spoon theory. Now, if you're not aware of what spoon theory is, it's an interesting kind of way of describing how much energy you have throughout the day. And the idea is you have a finite number of spoons. So you wake up in the morning and you have like a bag of spoons. And every task you do in the day uses up a certain amount of those spoons. And once the spoons are gone, that's it. You can't really do anything anymore. Maybe you can do some small tasks, or you can do some tasks that give you spoons back, but you can't do complicated, difficult tasks. So for me, an example of a high spoon task might be socializing. I find socializing difficult. I enjoy it, but if I'm tired and have very few spoons, I won't be able to do it very well. And there are aspects of my work that I find are high spoon tasks, and there are aspects of my work that I actually find give me spoons back. So an example of a kind of spoon giving part of my job is whenever I'm giving back to the Neurocats community, it really gives me energy and helps me get through my day. So the reason I bring this up is because it gives us a good way of talking about how these aspects on websites affect the neurodivergent users. So any aspect that makes it more difficult for a user means that that will take spoons away from them. So you might find that as they progress through using your website, they get more and more sort of little niggles and problems, and eventually they've run out of spoons. So do you know what? I can't do this now. And they close the tab and they go off and make a cup of coffee because they've had 3 cups of tea already today. So have that in your mind. But I also like to talk about spoon theory because I find it helps give a good frame of reference for other neurodivergent folks. So my wife is also neurodivergent, and we can talk about having spoons. So I can be like, I'm really low on spoons. Would you mind doing this? Or I could say, oh, it seems like you're low on spoons. Do you want me to do that? And it gives us a nice frame of reference to talk about kind of energy levels. I've also seen the spoon theory, but not spoon theory. Seen people talk about like spell slots and things like that. And as a newly converted Dungeons and Dragons player, I also like that version. The next one is to please let me fail, but help me succeed in smaller letters. So sometimes I'll get things wrong. I might fill out the form wrong or do the thing, and I've not done exactly what you wanted because I've misread some instruction or something like that. That's okay. I'm okay failing. Just tell me what I've done wrong clearly. If you can, tell me how to make it right. Let me resubmit it. Let me change it. Never just take what I've done as wrong and then not let me do anything about it. You can't edit that now. This was a big problem I had with Twitter, where I'm pretty good at writing a thing and not proofreading it and then sending it out and then being cross at myself because there's a small typo there and then obsessing about it for ages. So yeah, just give me ways to make it right if I do something wrong. That's all I want. Help me make decisions. This is a really good one. Sometimes I can be slow to weigh up options and things like that. Tell me what the consequences are of my choices. If at all possible, let me say, actually, I didn't mean to do that. I wanted to do this other thing. That is really helpful for me. This would be good just not on the web, but also in my life in general. That would be cool. It's one of my favorites. I think this might actually be my favorite slide in the whole thing. So sometimes I'll take the long way around. I'm just going to read it verbatim. This isn't just on the web. This is in my entire life. So as a real world example, sometimes I will drive. Well, no. Whenever I do the school run in the morning, I always drive a way that is slightly longer than the shortest path because I enjoy it more. It's nicer. There's less chance of me like coming face to face with the school bus. It's slightly prettier. There's kind of easier turns and things, and yet it's longer. So why would I do that? And I worked out that I do this on. Would you know the battery must be going on this because I charged it just before the call. Hooray! Hooray for batteries. Um, Hopefully you can still hear me. If not, please, if someone just pops up and says, actually we can't, they wouldn't be able to hear me saying that. Imagine. Right. So on the web, I also do this. So as an example, I will search for something and then I will go to something else, and then I will use that to go to the next thing. I can think of a GitHub example. Sometimes I'll go to the organization that I want to go to see something on, and then I will search for the repository, and then I'll go to the repository, and then I will go from there to issues or PRs or whatever I want to see. Now I could quite easily put the whole address in straight away because I probably know it. And so I've been trying to work out why I don't do that. And I can tell you the reason I don't is because it gives me comfort to make the journey. It lets me settle into what I'm going to do when I get there, and it requires less cognitive overhead. So the reason I bring this up is if I went straight there, then I have to pause while my brain kind of works out the thing that I was going to do. So it's almost like if I went in the one route to school and I don't get stopped at traffic lights, but it takes me longer. Whereas if I go the other way, I have to sit at a red light for ages, but it actually takes me less time. But it's not fun to sit at the red light. And then when I get there, I'm kind of more stressed and I have a little bit less energy and stuff. So um, I guess what I'm saying with this one is give users multiple ways to find their way about your website. Give them searches, also give them navigational elements, give them links between different sections that are related, and let them find their own paths, their own kind of beautiful journeys through your website so that they know, like, when they get there, they've had a nice time and that they're ready to do what they wanted to do when they got there. Help me find stuff. This is kind of related. So a good search is a lifesaver for me because I will often I say I'll go straight to the URL on a repository or whatever. Sometimes I can't because for some reason my brain can't keep the names of all of the repositories that I deal with in my head. So being able to search for those is really helpful for me. I think it's one of the things that GitHub now does well. The code search especially is great for me, and I find I'm using it all the time to see where something is in the real world and then find the code that is related to it. So anything you can do to help the users find things on your website is super helpful for me. This is a hard one. I don't like change. And And I put to start with in brackets. I could easily have done it without the to start with. I think maybe I just don't like change. But I've been thinking about this a lot, especially in relation to my work. So we will often have new features that get introduced, and when they're put into kind of feature preview, you'll be able to go back to the old method of doing it. So you'll be able to say, oh yeah, maybe I'm not so keen on this right now. I'm going to go back to how it was, which is great. I think that's really helpful for me. But I have been thinking about that's going to go away eventually, because you don't want that a company is not going to support two different ways of doing something forever. So the old way will eventually be turned off, and then you'll have to change anyway. And so I've been wondering about, wouldn't it be amazing if when you have feature previews, there's a little thing which says, if you're not enjoying this, please turn it off with this button or whatever. And then when you've got the old version, it gives you another button saying, we have a new version, which we would love you to use, turn it on. But then some sort of indication of um, how how long you've got before the old version goes away. Because if I know that in 3 weeks, the old version is going to get turned off, then at 2 weeks or so, I might start using the new version, maybe every now and then, and I will give you feedback. I'm fastidious about expressing my opinion, especially if I'm passionate about something. So if you want to get good, strong, healthy opinions about your products, that'll be a great way to do it. I'd be more than happy to help you. So there you go. This is a tricky one for me, I think, because I don't think anyone does this like really well yet. I know some people who did it really badly. Facebook used to do this incredibly badly. They just used to completely change everything on a whim, it felt like, when I was younger. And then suddenly I would hate Facebook for, I don't know, a week. And they'd be like, oh, it's fine, actually. Oh, it's okay, I can do this. And then they would change again. That was difficult for me. Yeah, making things disappear. Where did it go? Um, Toasts, I find those hard. Maybe I won't even have seen it by the time it's disappeared. Warnings that are temporarily there. I like the idea of, I think it's the term's called like a toast rack. So something where if you get some sort of information, then it goes to a place so that you can look back through them. So you can see, oh, that was there. What did it say again? And then you've got like a list that you can eventually delete when you know you've read them. I quite like that. And it leads me on to notification fatigue, because I think that would count as a notification. GitHub's a big place, and there's a real difficulty keeping up with all of the notifications that appear for your team, your team's team, the wider org, the company as a whole. Like there's just a lot of information, and it's kind of battered constantly at you. And so finding a way to manage notifications can be really tricky. And I think the thing that I've seen that works well at GitHub is the fact that you can manage how your notifications are delivered. So I think that's very important. You can get email notifications, and I know a lot of people who use those to make sure they don't miss things. I can't cope with email notifications, so they're turned off completely. I don't get any emails from GitHub at all. Whereas I use the online notification system exclusively, where I can tweak kind of what I'm looking at and which parts of the notifications I have. And I have a regular part of my day when I go through all of my notifications to make sure I haven't missed anything. And hopefully you can't hear the incredibly loud rain that is hammering above me. Zoom's usually pretty good at blocking those things out. So if I sound like I'm shouting, it's because I'm shouting, and I apologize. This is a good one, because I've got a top tip for this. Just help me, and this is something that I feel like is going away with the advent of like AI help bots and things like that. I don't like talking to humans um, on the phone and things like that, but I do like being helped by real people when I have a problem. So I have a top tip for this, because you can never get email addresses for companies anymore, or people that you want to discuss things with. And my top tip is go on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, message the person who is the company that you want to deal with or whatever, and just send them a direct message saying, hi, I'm autistic. I really struggle with like voice conversations or support systems, etc., etc. Is there any way I can have some help with this thing over Twitter? And I've found that maybe 6 out of 10 times they will respond and they will help you, which is fantastic. And if that carries on being a thing, then I'll be very happy. So we're getting close on time, I think. So we're going to rattle through some accessibility guidance and resources. There is, as you are no doubt aware, there's already web accessibility guidelines around a lot of these things. So there's WCAG, there's COGA, there's some links there. Download the slides off my repository and you will be able to follow those. They're pretty easy to find. There's also some Microsoft design guidelines and tools, which I really, really like. There's the Inclusive Design for Cognition guidebook, and there's also a relatively new mental health guidebook. One of the big takeaways from the mental health guidebook is just involve users and usability and stuff like that with people, which is one of my big takeaways. And then some other useful resources. I actually saw someone from one of the other talks using one of the slides from the UK government's do's and don'ts on designing for accessibility. I thought was great. They have a huge range of these posters, which are all fantastic. There's one on ADHD. There's one on autism. There's one on it'll come to me. Anxiety. There we go. I just had to think about how I felt, and then the word came to me. And then there's a GitHub blog which I co-wrote with a fellow Neurocat, which is about how GitHub supports neurodiverse employees, and it comes with a lot of tips about creating kind of good communities and things like that. So, if you want to be inclusive, engage with your community, find the community, create a space for that community. They will very happily tell you when things are difficult for them. And if you help them by fixing that, then everyone's a winner. Right, my conclusions. Be kind. This is a conclusion I put on all of my talks, whether it's relevant or not. It is relevant to this talk. Be kind, ask questions, keep learning, and I hope you've enjoyed this talk. That is the end. We're going to have a chat. Hopefully, I think we've got a bit of time. I have a note whenever I do chat things, which is I like safe space vibes. This is being recorded, so this is kind of a reminder for myself that oversharing is a thing, and to be careful what you say. There we are.
Thank you so
Wow.
much, Owen.
That was fantastic. So Wendy, do we have any questions for Owen?
We do have questions for Owen. So one came in through the chat. This was from Julia. Julia asked about your slides. I noticed on the slides that you have sections in all caps. Does it pose any problems? I tend to avoid it at all costs unless it's really short.
That is a good question, and yes, I think it does. I was doing the slides in a rush, and I couldn't work out how to turn off the all caps in PowerPoint. If anyone can tell me how to do that, then I will fix it for the online. But you can, great. Find me online and message me, and I will fix that. And I apologize to anyone who finds it difficult.
Amazing. I love a live debugging. The next question is from Leonie. When it comes to audio playing automatically on page load, does expectation make any difference? As in, if you know a website is going to play something automatically, does that change your experience?
That's a good question. I think it does change my experience, but it doesn't make it all better, if that makes sense. So as a very recent example of this, during the talk about designing for older people, there was a bit where she was playing different frequency sounds, and I knew they were coming, and I was listening to it, and I was totally prepared. And then when they came, it still bothered me, which was really interesting. And I absolutely no problem with the presentation because I think it was fascinating and really interesting. But I found it interesting that it still kind of caused me problems, even though I knew that's what it was going to be. But it was better than if she'd just played it without warning. I probably would have turned it off.
Interesting. This question is actually from me. I'm a fellow neurodivergent. I have ADHD. And one of the challenges that I find in the neurodiverse community is that we are so diverse. And what works for one person may not work for another. And sometimes it can be as simple as, I don't like that, but it can also be, oh, like, don't do that, I really don't like it, versus, and it'd be someone else's like ideal scenario. What recommendations or practices have you found that help to address that in like the design and development process?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think one of the main things is like giving people choice. So if people can like have settings and accessibility choices that they can make so that they can change their experience to fit them, I think that's really important. I think this is a wider problem as well, because as ND folk always get lumped in together. And so I'm autistic and my wife is almost certainly ADHD. And we like to say that we're a normal functioning human between us, because we both have totally different struggles and things. And that's quite nice because we can complement each other and like take tasks that one or other of us finds difficult. But I've also noticed when we go to, like, we're involved in a number of disability charities, and often there'll be kids with autism and ADHD put together, and sometimes they find it hard to engage with each other because they have very different needs. And so I think it's really important to have these discussions and this dialogue about kind of those differences and how you can try and support all people. I mean, not just ND people, but everyone's different. So just be cognizant of that.
Absolutely. That is the questions that I have prepared, but I'm keeping an eye on the chat in case there are any last minute entries.
If there aren't, and anyone's interested in why I kind of seem to be reaching down to my desk every now and then, it's because I have a collection of nice little stones that I fiddle with while I'm talking. This one's my favorite. It's a little black one. It's nice and smooth.
Ooh.
I have a comment from Twitter from Kathy Cheat. And they said, I joined Owen Niblock's talk on neurodivergent inclusive web design towards the end, but there's a lot of good points in there. I'm also autistic. We'll rewatch later from the beginning. So
Great.
got some fans out there.
Sweet. And you can always get in touch with me as well. My contact details are on the first slide. So say hi and I will awkwardly talk to you.
Well,
There is a question in the chat, and I'm not sure if I know what they're asking, because it says, can you say more about NO and music? And I'm not sure if they meant a different acronym, because I don't know what NO is.
Unless they meant ND.
Maybe?
Perhaps. Yeah. Not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure what they're asking either.
Sorry, Marcia.
Although they might be asking about all the musical things I have behind me because I haven't tidied up.
ND, yes, neurodivergence
There we
in
are.
music.
I mean, as you can see from behind me, I'm a huge fan of music. I find going to music gigs quite difficult to cope with. Now that I've got some noise cancelling headphones, I find that great. And I do listen to a lot of music. I listen to loud, angry, depressing grunge music a lot of the time. That's my bag. And I think it helps me get out of myself and lose my kind of brain a little bit. I'm not sure what else to say about music. I love how complicated music can be. I think it's really such a beautiful thing that humans have created this kind of way of making sound that creates emotion. It's incredible.
All right, I think that's everything from the chat. Thank you again, Owen. This was such an interesting talk.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely.
Well, thanks again, Owen, and everyone. If you've liked the session, hit that YouTube like button, and don't forget that you can subscribe to youtube.com/inclusivedesign24 to be kept in the loop for our future events. Inclusive Design is brought to you with thanks to our supporters: Barrier Break, Intopia, Infoaxia, Tetralogical, Intuit, Adrian Roselli LLC, Assistive Labs, the Law Office of Laney Feingold, Skyscanner, and Vispero. Inclusive Design 24 will be back on the hour with our next session. See you then.